There is a spirit in the waters of the Niger Delta, ancient, watchful, and fierce. He is not a myth. He is not a relic of forgotten beliefs. He is justice itself. His name is Egbesu, and though they tried to erase him, ban him, and bury his name beneath colonial shame, he never left. He waited. He watched. And now his voice is rising again. From the murmur of creeks to the chants of warriors, Egbesu walks. Not as a ghost of the past, but as a living force. A god who governs with balance and strikes with sacred wrath. What makes Egbesu different from the gods the world is used to? Why was he feared by empires? Why do his priests still speak in whispers, and his shrines still command silence? What is it about this god that made colonizers send gunboats and missionaries to cleanse his land? They feared his followers because they were not rebels. They were spiritual warriors. They did not kill without cause. They fought only when the laws of balance were broken. Egbesu is not chaos. He is correction. He is the embodiment of justice in its purest form, where judgment comes not from man, but from the divine. But this is not just an ancient story of masks and spears, it is a living reality. Because today in the Delta Creeks where the oil runs thick and the people still suffer, the name of Egbesu is once again being called, not by the powerless but by the chosen. At the center of this reawakening is a man, High Chief Government Egbesu, known as Tompolo. To many he is a leader, to others a warrior. But to those who understand the spirit world, he is something more. The living priest of Egbesu, the vessel through whom the god now speaks again. This is the story of a god who was never supposed to be remembered. A god who stood against empires, protected his people, and still delivers judgment through storms and silence. This is not a legend. This is a return. From the origin of Egbesu in the beginning of time to his present manifestation in Tompolo, we will trace every thread, every chant, every battle, every ritual, because the God of justice has returned. And this time, we will not look away. In the time before time, when the world was still young and the spirits walked openly among men, there was no law, only chaos and power. Men took what they wanted. The strong devoured the weak. The rivers flowed with blood as much as with water. And in the heart of this unbalanced world, the cries of the innocent reached the heavens. The Supreme Spirit, known in many names across the Niger Delta, heard this cry. And so, from the breath of divine justice and the silence of ancestral order, a being was born, not to rule, but to correct. That being was Egbesu. Egbesu did not come with thunder. He came with balance. He did not demand worship. He demanded alignment. He was the law made flesh, the principle of divine justice made spirit. It is said that he emerged from the sacred waters, cloaked in white, his feet never touching the ground. In his hands were the instruments of his authority, not just weapons, but symbols. The staff of law, the mirror of truth, and the blade that divides justice from vengeance. Where he walked, evil trembled. Where he spoke, wrong was corrected. He was not a god of fire. He was a god of balance. And from him came the foundation of what the Ijaw people call divine order. Egbesu revealed himself first to the elders, the wise ones who sat by the riverbanks and listened more than they spoke. He did not appear in cities or palaces. He came to the humble, to those who had been wronged, to those who still remembered the old ways. To them he gave instruction. Build no temple of stone, for I dwell in the hearts of the just. Spill no innocent blood, for I see beyond the veil. Use not my name in vanity, for every oath carries judgment. These were not rules. They were living laws, binding as breath and sacred as blood. From these revelations came the first circle of Egbesu priests, men called not by ambition but by visions, by dreams, by ancestral whispers. They were taught not to seek power, but to wield it with discipline. They fasted, meditated, and learned the sacred chants. They were guardians of the law, enforcers of balance. mediators between the people and the god who watched from the waters. Egbesu was not simply a protector of the Ijaw people. He was the principle that gave shape to their world, a force that declared, "There is a line, and it must not be crossed. And when it is, I will rise." Egbesu is not a god of war. He is a god of justice. And yet, when justice must be defended, when the innocent are crushed, when balance is broken beyond words and rituals, then, and only then, does Egbesu rise in war. But this war is not chaos. It is not vengeance. It is sacred. It is guided by the code, the unwritten, unbreakable law that every Egbesu warrior must carry in their bones. The code is older than memory. It is passed not on paper, but through initiation. No man becomes an Egbesu warrior by desire alone. He must be chosen. The signs must appear, in dreams, in visions, in the patterns of nature. The priests must confirm the calling, and once chosen, the warrior must surrender his former life. He enters the shrine as a man, but if he emerges, he is something else entirely, a vessel of divine justice, sworn to a path few can endure. The training is not just physical, it is spiritual, psychological, ancestral. The body must be purified through fasting and sacred water rites. The mind must be sharpened by chants and silence. The heart must be tested by the weight of oaths. He learns the sacred language of symbols, the meanings of each mark, each rhythm, each breath. He is taught not to speak unless he has something worthy to say. He is taught that every action has consequence, and that once the spirit of Egbesu moves through you, you are no longer your own. When war is declared by Egbesu, it is not for gain, it is for balance. No warrior takes up arms unless the shrine confirms injustice has been done, that a sacred line has been crossed, that diplomacy has failed, that spiritual warnings have been ignored. Only then are the warriors prepared, not with hatred, but with precision. They enter battle not screaming, but chanting, their bodies marked with the sacred ash, their souls armored in invocation. Some believe they cannot be killed by ordinary bullets. Others say their presence alone can make enemies flee. What is known as this: when true Egbesu warriors rise, the land itself pays attention. But not all battles are fought with weapons. Some are fought with truth, with resistance, with refusal to submit to what is wrong. Egbesu warriors have stood against colonial rule, corrupt chiefs, and even spiritual impostors. Because the code demands one thing above all: justice, no matter who stands in the way. This is not the war of men. It is the war of gods. And those who fight under Egbesu's law are not just soldiers. They are sacred defenders of a world that must not fall to chaos. The shrine of Egbesu is not built for the eye. It is built for the spirit. Hidden from the unworthy, protected by elders, and consecrated with sacred rites, the shrine is a living being. It breathes with history, with power, with silence. No one enters it lightly. No one leaves unchanged. It is here that the Egbesu priests, the spiritual architects of justice, guard the most ancient secrets of the Ijaw people. To become a priest is not to seek power. It is to be claimed by it. Egbesu chooses his own. The calling can come through a dream, a persistent vision, or a personal tragedy that pulls the soul into a deeper path. The elders know the signs. When the spirit of Egbesu touches someone, it marks them. From that moment, they are watched, tested, and when the time is right, they are brought into the rituals of preparation. The initiation is not public. It is not performed for applause. It begins with isolation, the separation from the world. The initiate must fast, sometimes for days, purifying the body. He must bathe in sacred water, prepared by elders who speak no word during the process. He is marked with white chalk, dressed in cloth that has touched the altar, and led into the heart of the shrine, where the silence is not empty, it is alive. In the shrine, he learns the sacred chants, not songs, codes. Each one is a vibration that opens a gate, awakens a force, or seals a truth. He is taught to speak to the spirits, to listen for what cannot be heard, to see what lies behind the veil. The shrine is filled with symbols, bones, mirrors, stones, feathers, each one charged with spiritual meaning. He learns their language. He learns their law. The Egbesu priest is not a preacher. He is a judge. He interprets omens, delivers verdicts, and corrects imbalance. He does not speak often, but when he does, his words carry weight. The people come to him not for blessing, but for clarity. When disputes cannot be settled by human hands, the priest invokes the spirit, and when he speaks the judgment of Egbesu, it is final. No appeal, no delay, because the spirit does not guess. It knows. There are taboos, sacred laws. A priest may not lie. He may not steal. He must not defile the altar. He must not raise his hand in anger unless instructed by the spirit. If he breaks the code, the punishment is not human. It is spiritual. His dreams will rot. His body may suffer. His voice will lose its power. Because Egbesu's law is not optional, it is eternal. This is why the Egbesu priesthood cannot be bought, cannot be faked, cannot be corrupted. It is not a role. It is a covenant. And once you wear the cloth of Egbesu, your life no longer belongs to you. It belongs to justice. The British did not understand Egbesu, and what they could not understand, they feared. When colonial ships anchored in the Niger Delta, they came not only with trade, but with a mission: to dominate, to restructure, to erase. They saw the Ijaw people not as sovereigns, but as subjects. And when they encountered the shrines of Egbesu, the priests draped in white, the warriors chanting songs of balance, they declared war not on a people, but on a god. The British called Egbesu a cult. They called his followers rebels. They dismissed the rituals as superstition, the invocations as noise. But they were wrong. The British thought they were facing a tribal uprising. What they were actually facing was sacred resistance. They were facing a code older than empire, a force that did not bend to gunpowder or gold. They were facing Egbesu, and Egbesu does not kneel. The shrines became targets. Colonial troops burned sacred groves. They arrested priests, scattered warriors, banned gatherings. They tried to crush the spirit by breaking the body. But they could not touch what they could not see. The true Egbesu warriors went underground. The rituals continued in silence. The chants were whispered beneath the sound of drums. And in the hearts of the people, Egbesu lived, hidden, patient, watching. There are stories that British soldiers would fire their guns at Egbesu warriors, only to see the bullets fall harmlessly to the ground. They said these men were protected by charms, by magic, but the Ijaw knew better. It was not charm, it was covenant. The warriors did not fear death because they had already died to the world. They walked in the shadow of Egbesu, and in that shadow no weapon formed could prosper. But the British did more than attack the shrines. They attacked the memory. They rewrote textbooks. They outlawed the priesthood. They replaced the laws of Egbesu with courts that knew nothing of spirit. They taught the children to forget. And for a time it seemed they had won. But Egbesu cannot be erased. A god born from justice cannot be buried in injustice. And even as the British built their courts, the river still remembered. The land still remembered. The bones of the ancestors whispered beneath the soil, waiting for the day the spirit would rise again. That day would come. And when it did, it would come not as a whisper, but as a return. The spirit of Egbesu was never gone. It was waiting. Waiting for a time when the world would need justice again. Waiting for a man who could carry the weight of his voice. That man was not chosen by politics, not lifted by religion, not crowned by tradition. He was called by the river, marked by dreams, pressed by visions. His name is High Chief Government Egbesu, known to the world as Tompolo, known to the spirit world as the living priest of Egbesu. To many, Tompolo began as a militant leader, a defender of the Niger Delta against exploitation and oppression. But to those who understand the hidden layers, he was something more. His path was not political alone, it was spiritual. The signs were clear. His battles were not just for oil, but for justice. His victories were not just strategy, but spirit. The elders say Egbesu called him through the waters, through silence, through revelation. And when he answered, the God of justice moved again. Tompolo did not rise with slogans. He rose with shrines. He rebuilt altars. He restored rituals that had been silent for generations. He did not speak the name of Egbesu as metaphor. He lived it. He wore the white. He revived the chants. He walked the land not as a leader of men, but as a vessel of justice. To the Ijaw, this was not strange. This was prophecy fulfilled. Under his guidance, Egbesu's law was not just remembered. It was practiced. Disputes once thrown to corrupt courts were now judged by ancestral law. Young men once lost to confusion were initiated as warriors again, not into violence but into order. Sacred gatherings returned. Drums spoke in old rhythms. The land began to breathe. But Tompolo's power was never his own. He said it himself. I am only the servant. The real leader is the spirit. He knew what he carried. He knew the price of that calling. Attacks came. Accusations rose. The state tried to silence him, to remove the threat. But how do you silence what walks with the gods? How do you capture what lives in the wind, in the river, in the memory of the ancestors? You do not silence Egbesu. You awaken him. And through Tompolo, the god of justice awakened. Not in legend, but in the living world. The Niger Delta is a land of paradox, rich with oil, yet soaked in poverty. A land where the earth bleeds wealth, but the people cry for justice. The rivers carry the sheen of crude, the soil bears scars of extraction, and promises flow more easily than clean water. In this modern storm of corruption, conflict, and exploitation, Egbesu has not remained silent. He has risen again, not in myth, but in movement. The resurgence of Egbesu in the struggles of the Delta is not just symbolic, it is spiritual warfare. For when man's law fails, the people return to the spirit. In the face of broken pipelines, polluted farms, and ignored voices, Egbesu has become more than a god. He is the last court. The warriors who rise today do so not for conquest, but to reclaim order. Their war is not for destruction, it is for restoration. Many outsiders call them militants, but inside the Delta they are seen differently. They are protectors, guided by priests, bound by ancestral oaths, driven by a moral code deeper than constitutions. Before they move, they consult the shrine. Before they speak, they pour libation. And when they act, they do so not as criminals, but as agents of justice. Because to move without Egbesu's blessing is to court disaster. Under Tompolo's spiritual leadership, this balance has been maintained. He is not a warlord. He is a servant of sacred order. When he intervenes in conflict, he does so with the authority of tradition and the wisdom of spirit. He is not above the law. He answers to a higher one. The law of Egbesu does not bend for power, money, or title. It sees only truth. It punishes only imbalance. Egbesu is now more than a historical force. He is a living presence in community governance, in conflict mediation, in youth reformation. His name is invoked not just in shrines, but in street corners and private prayers and moments when men must choose between peace and chaos. He reminds the people of who they are, not victims, but descendants of warriors, of priests, of a God who still walks. And as the oil still flows and the struggle continues, one thing remains constant. Egbesu watches. Justice cannot be sold. Spirit cannot be silenced. and balance must always be restored. Egbesu still walks, not in temples of marble, not in books filled with foreign names, but in the mud of the delta, in the silence of the shrine, in the breath of the priest, and in the footsteps of warriors who remember. He walks in dreams, in thunder, in the spaces between conflict and peace. The world may change, but justice does not. And Egbesu, the god who was born from balance, will never leave a land that still calls his name. They tried to bury him with churches, with courts, with bullets. They tried to shame his priests, mock his rituals, and turn his warriors into criminals. But the river did not forget. The land did not forget. The bones buried deep beneath the creek still pulse with memory. And now, through the voice of Tompolo, through the revival of the shrines, through the resistance of the people, Egbesu has spoken again. He is not a god of yesterday. He is the spirit of now. He teaches that justice is not a weapon. It is a mirror. That power must answer to truth. That war must serve peace. That spirit cannot be tamed by government, money, or religion. Egbesu does not ask for praise. He asks for alignment. And when balance is broken, he moves, not with fury, but with finality. To know Egbesu is to understand that justice is sacred, that warriors can be healers, that priests can be leaders, that gods can still walk among us, not as fantasy but as force. His presence is not a myth to be debated. It is a reality to be felt. Ask the land. Ask the wind. Ask the man who has walked the fire and returned untouched. Ask Tompolo, whose voice carries the weight of silence. Egbesu still walks, and as long as injustice lives, as long as the river cries, as long as the land waits for restoration, he will keep walking. If this story touched something deep in you, share it, like it, subscribe. Let the world know the spirit of justice was never lost. It only waited for us to remember.